And now to a special excerpt this evening. Imported from foreign lands to Kenya in 1983 with good intentions to end desertification, Prosopis juliflora, commonly known as Mathenge plant, has turned into the proverbial poison apple. The plant is now edging out indigenous species, including grass, putting the ecosystem at danger as it continuously reduces arable land. Our reporter Sarafina Robi takes us through the introduction of Mathenge plant, its spread across different parts of the country, and the factors aiding its spread.
A goat in court at Kenya's Milimani law courts, seeking justice to no end against an invasive species that was and still is costing its life and that of other livestock made headlines in 2013. The case is that of an invasive species called Prosopis juliflora, colloquially known in Kenya as Mathenge.
Kuna wakati tuliona hii mbegu sasa imekuwa tatizo kwa sisi community hii ya Jamus. Sasa sehemu hii tambarare ya chini hapa ndio kwenda kushitaki.
Na ruling ya court ni kwamba mumanage hii mti.
It was first documented in the country in 1973 at Bamburi in Mombasa. In the years that followed, more individual plants were introduced until cultivation on a large and extensive scale in 1983 in Baringo County and the Bura region, Taita Taveta. A drive down to Eldume in Baringo County to ascertain the situation, we meet 75-year-old Philip Ledida under a towering tree with stems that grow in a jagged fashion and a bark with grey-green color that has become rougher and scalier with time. Ledida was 30 years old when the Prosopis juliflora, also known as Mathenge, was first introduced in Baringo in 1983 to fight desertification.
Watu ya forest walianza kuleta mbegu, walianza kututa hapa forest station Marigat. Ndio sasa hapa Eldume ndio tukaanza kupanda. Huu mti ambayo tuko sahi chini yake ndio wa kwanza hapa. Tulileta hiyo miche kupanda, ndio huu mti sahi ukiona tuko naye. Hata hakuna mtoto ilisaliwa kwa hao watoto sasa wangu ukiona hapa.
At inception, it was a celebrated idea by the community.
Hii mbegu ilikuwa tunafurahia kabisa tukiona kwa sababu hapa ilikuwa ni jangwa. Ilikuwa mahali ya mmonyoko, mchanga ilikuwa ikipasuka ovyo mara tu mvua ikinyesha.
Aside from Baringo, we also take a tour in one of the most affected counties at the coastal part of Kenya, Tana River County, which exhibits a colony of the invasive species Mathenge. The locals talk of how floods have contributed to the widespread of Mathenge.
Sasa wakati maji yakija, mvua ikinyesha, hizi Mathenge zinazaa kiwango ambacho hakifai. Paka inabidi mtu akitaka kulima, paka angangane na hiyo Mathenge, akate ndio apate sehemu ya kulima.
After the floods, you have the emergence of what we call pioneer species. And most of the pioneer species actually are invasive species. Because those species can easily colonize that area because they are very competitive. They are very adaptive and they are very resilient.
In Baringo, the seeds were mostly spread by livestock.
Lakini kutoka huu miti aanze kusambaa na kuenea sehemu yote. Kama vile ilivyosambazwa na hii kinyesi ya mifugo, mahali watakula, wanamwaga mbegu huko, mahali wanalala. Ndio huu miti ikaanza sasa kwa wingi.
Dr. Mutuku Musili, a senior research scientist at the National Museum, speaks of the dangers of invasive species in rangelands.
The problem with invasive species is that they will just take over, they will colonize, and they will not allow other plants to thrive. We need to plant trees, but not any tree. We need to look for example, indigenous trees. Right now in Kenya, we are talking about 15 billion trees. But we need also to think about what trees are we going to plant. And in some places, we found that actually the invasive species were taking over 60% of the space. And we find that now people didn't have places to graze their cattle anymore. Wildlife did not have food anymore, so to speak. And some of the species that were aged out, they could be medicinal plants, they could be fruits, they could be useful plants. They are no longer there. So people can no longer now access those plants.
Both residents of Baringo and Tana River County are in agreement as they decry the menace that is the Mathenge plant.
Hata inatuharibia mashamba na mji.
Wakikula, wakienda, wakinywa hicho kinyesi chao, itakuwa ni Mathenge inazaa.
Ikachinda ng'ombe kumaliza kabisa hii nini kwa meno yake. Ndio ikaanza kuharibu meno ya ng'ombe, mbuzi, na ngoa meno, na kucheua kwake inakuwa tena ni shida kwa sababu sasa ile nyasi ambayo chakula ng'ombe amemesa huwezi kucheua tena kwa sababu imekuwa na gamu.
Ile matunda yake ng'ombe akikula ama mbuzi inarudi kwa sumu na kuharibu na hakuna tiba. Pia Mathenge imeanza kufunga mito, maji inaleta floods, inafunga maji siende bahari kwa wingi, na imeleta madhara ya watu kuhamishwa na kuwa displaced.
This begs the question on whether there was enough research before the introduction of the Mathenge plant in the country.
It indicates that actually there were no studies that had been done to show that it will later be problematic. So there was no enough research before they were introduced. If they are let in the world, they are going to affect us. Today, there's a lot of them. If you go to Tana River, there's a lot of them. As you go now, they are more of a dry, eastern side.
It was not until 2008 when President William Ruto, who was then the Kenyan Minister for Agriculture, declared the species noxious. Even though the Mathenge plant has been used by locals before to produce charcoal, the Kenyan government instituted a moratorium on unlicensed logging and charcoal production. However, in places like Garissa County, the species is used in making briquettes.
We have come up with this very innovative solutions where these invasive species, these shrubs, are getting turned into briquettes, which the communities are now using for their day-to-day household fuel consumption.
So we are using this tree to carbonize it. After we carbonize, we convert that carbonized briquettes as a biomass. We add value and convert that into the briquettes that you see that we have been able to introduce to the community.
A source of energy that is considered sustainable.
It has high calorific value, which means the heat level is very high that it can cook any kind of food. The other value that it has is that it burns for over 4 hours. And using such kind of low quantity energy for 4 hours, you can use cookings in your homes, in your institutions, within the shortest time, within the longest time possible.
However, those affected still seek ways of removing and extinguishing the plant.
What has been attempted actually is physically removing them. I'm not aware of any biological or chemical control that has taken place elsewhere because there are no resources. There is no funding for that. The government needs to really see to it that it considers providing funds to research institutions like National Museums of Kenya.
Aside from people and livestock, other natural resources such as River Takwel and River Tana, including Tana River Primate National Reserve and Arawali National Reserve and the Loitikipi Plains, are particularly sensitive ecosystems that are now threatened by Prosopis juliflora or Mathenge. Scientists and researchers now warn of an imminent danger that lies in the loss of a certain species, especially indigenous species, due to effects of climate change such as floods and drought. The big question to most governments is what measures are they putting in place to prevent this imminent danger of the loss of biological diversity. Serafina Robi for KBC Channel 1 from the National Museum of Kenya in Nairobi.